Oh, didn't see you there.
Oh, hello. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Well, hello and welcome to our Hops and Vines tasting at Abbey Road Farm. I'm Kristen, the Director of Events here at Abbey Road, and this is Luke Wylde. He is our Associate Winemaker at Abbey Road Farm. So the farm and myself personally have actually been involved in this event since its creation in 2017. So we're really excited to be able to participate, although it looks a little different than what we were anticipating. I think it'll still be a great way to share some wines with you. If you're watching this, hopefully you already have your bottles of wine at home with you. And if you want to open them up, you can let them breathe for a little bit. Luke, tell me a little bit about the calves. Both of these are not corked, right?
No, they're not. Yeah.
So what's the difference of that? What does that mean? Is it different than corking?
It can be, yeah. So I mean, the main reason or the biggest difference there is that you obviously aren't like sticking the corkscrew in and like popping that cork. But as far as aging potential goes, if you buy the right kind of screw caps, it's going to have the exact same aging potential, if not a better aging potential, as a wine under cork. And that's for myriad reasons, but I'll open this Chardonnay here. When you're opening up your Chardonnay, and we'll pour some just a little bit, but Chardonnay and Pinot, if you look inside the cap here, you notice that it's not like a metal or tin lining there. It's actually it's like a membrane, and that membrane comes with different permeabilities to allow oxygen transfer into the wine. So it's not like you are sealing this up with the cork with the screw cap, and it's like a hermetically sealed thing. It very much allows some oxygen exchange, much like a cork would. What I like about screw caps better in some cases than a cork is, one, you're never going to have a corked bottle, so you're never going to have cork taint. And also the way that the wines age tends to be this really like even wine aging. And the difference with a cork is that since a cork is actually just like a plug of oak bark tree, it's like a cork oak tree. It's like a plug of the bark from that. Different corks are going to have different permeability and are going to allow different amounts of oxygen in. So this makes for a really nice, a nice closure on a bottle, because you know that the wine's always going to be good, and you can lay it down on its side, and you can also age them standing up. So with a cork, you need to kind of like age the bottles laying on their sides or upside down. With a screw cap, you can age the wine standing up. So it's a really nice closure. We don't use them for everything here at the farm, but for some of our flagship wines, you'll definitely see it, and I think it makes for a really nice product.
Yeah. I remember when they first started becoming more popular, they kind of lose the romance a little bit of like popping that cork and a good bottle of wine. But now I love it because I never have to have a corkscrew, which I never seem to be able to find one.
Yeah,
so
for
this
sure.
is just like super easy
It's
to
a nice
open.
camping thing, right?
For
like
sure.
If you're camping and you can just like shove this in the creek while you're like fishing for trout or something like that, and just pull it out and just crack it open.
Easy to serve.
I will say that when you're going through like some sommelier training, that they have a whole portion of becoming a somm that is like how to deal with screw cap wines, because increasingly more and more you're finding some incredibly high wines, high-end wines that have screw caps on them, and I think they're trying to take away that sort of like bad stigma of the screw cap and that like kind of crack it open
Still
sort of
making
feel.
it romantic.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the more that we see this kind of closure around, the more that it's just going to become just part of everybody's normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Chardonnay. So first off, wanted to make note of the label, which if you look at it closely, you'll see it is a mini donkey. So all of our Abbey Road Farm labels feature animals that live on our property. This one is Daphne. She's one of 3 mini donkeys who lives on our property, and she's the loudest one. She always does her hee-haw as people are walking by. That's why she is the star of our Chardonnay. And then if you want to tell us a little bit about this wine, then we can taste it.
Yeah, so the Abbey Road Farm Chardonnay is a blend of 2 different vineyards. It's a blend of Meredith Mitchell Vineyard, which is located in the McMinnville AVA, which is an AVA in the foothills just outside of the town of McMinnville, which is located about 10 minutes south and east from here. And then the rest of the Chardonnay came from a vineyard equidistant, just the opposite direction, in the Ribbon Ridge AVA named Omero. They both are great sites. They're kind of like banner Chardonnay sites here in the Willamette Valley. And James and I were very lucky enough to get to purchase some of the fruit from both of those vineyards and make the 2018 Chardonnay from those sites. They both feature different clones of Chardonnay, and we can get into that a little bit as we're tasting the wine. But they have very different sort of mesoclimates about them, different soils, different weather patterns, and that's what makes AVAs unique and different. For some context, we here at Abbey Road Farm are located in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. So we're talking about different designated areas within the Willamette Valley. They're like microcosms of the Willamette Valley that basically feature unique soil types or weather patterns, and so unique that they have been designated as a specific AVA, that's American Viticultural Area, and it makes for some really like site-specific type wines. And that's why I think it's kind of nice to get to blend two AVAs. When our vineyard comes online here at the farm, we'll be making 100% estate-grown Chardonnay, and we can't wait. It's going to be really nice.
Yeah, so speaking of our vineyard real quick, so we just planted, we bought the property about 3 years ago and started planting grapes, about a year and a half ago-ish?
Last year.
So none of our grapes on property are producing any fruit that we would use for wine production yet, but we're hoping maybe next year we'll be able to get some. So that's exciting, and then everything will be estate grown, but for now we purchase all of our grapes.
It's not because the vines are lazy, it's just that they're babies, and it's just like you wouldn't send a baby right off to college, like you gotta wait for them to grow up a little bit. They gotta, instead of putting all of their energy into producing fruit, it's better for the first couple years to allow the vines to just really put all of their energy into establishing good deep roots, because the better the root system, the more water uptake it has, and ultimately the healthier the life of the vine will be. So this wine, I think, is absolutely gorgeous. One of the things I really like about it is that it's not just like an overtly oaky Chardonnay. There is a little bit of oak on this wine, but it's not a brand new barrel. So what we did for this wine, this was a once used barrel. So once used means that this is a 2018, in 2017 Chardonnay was made in it, and then come 2018, it's the second use of that. So it was once used. This means that this wine only has a once used barrel in it. Everything else is neutral oak. Now for us, that means those barrels have been used at least 5 times, because around 5 times is when they stop tasting like oak.
Yeah, which that reminds me of like California wines that are usually very oaky, buttery, and this one definitely doesn't have that kind of aftertaste.
Not at all. And that's not a value judgment on the way that California wines are made. I quite like them.
It's just the style.
Yeah, just the style.
Yeah.
I think that you'll find even some of those kind of like bigger, like kind of aggressive oaky wines here in Oregon as well. It just really depends on the maker and the palate of the kind of house style. For us, we really like to capture quite a bit of brightness in the wine, and to make sure that like oak isn't the first thing that you're getting. We want it to be Chardonnay that you're tasting first. What kind of aromatics do you get in this? I don't get to talk to you nearly enough about what you're smelling and tasting.
I get a lot of pear from
Yeah.
this. I get a lot. That's very heavy, I think, when I am smelling it.
I always think of like, with this wine in particular, I think of like when bales of hay are brand new and they're not like completely dried out, and they still have that kind of like,
kind of musty.
but it's a little musty, but it's like that good kind of like wholesome earthiness about it that just like makes it sweetgrass kind of deal.
Solid farming smell.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love drinking wine at 11 in the morning, right?
Hopefully they might be watching it at 11.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. They can watch it whenever they want.
It's a pandemic. You can drink when you want.
Yeah, well, and so with the delivery, some folks chose to add on food, so like they could be pairing this with things. So if you were pairing this with something, what would you pair it with?
I have always been a sucker. That's a great question. I've always been a sucker for like really nice, like crispy skinned roast chicken for Chardonnays like this, with kind of, especially now that the weather's kind of turning into this fall sort of deal, with like the roasted carrots and the kind of like the whole
Brussels
preparation.
sprouts, that
Brussels
whole
sprouts
thing.
are great.
Earthy.
This wine has quite a lot of acidity, and when we say acidity, it's in the same way that like a lemon has quite a lot of acidity. Grapes don't have nearly that much, but they have a different types of acids in them. So where citrus has citric acid to it, the main acid in wines is acid that's unique to grapes, and it's called tartaric acid. If you taste just like powdered tartaric acid, it's exactly the kind of stuff that they put on Sour Patch Kids, like that kind of like candied, like that candy like sour stuff.
Yeah.
That is tartaric acid, and
Salty, sour.
yeah, like salty, sour, but it just has this like really nice kind of mouth-watering like unctuousness about it that really kind of makes the wine palatable for food.
Yeah.
There are varying degrees of amounts of acid in different white wines and reds for that matter. And Chardonnay, if you pick it right, it can be ripe fruit and still have a lot of natural acidity. Our main goal here at Abbey Road Farm when we're making wines is to just let the grapes do the talking and not do a lot of fussing around with the wines. We don't like to add any acid to our wines if we can avoid it. I mean, Tempranillo, we make that sometimes. We have to do that. And this is a great look at how a 2018 Chardonnay could be quite ripe and still have a lot of nice, like mouth-watering acidity that's gonna be great for food. That's why I think that roasted chicken with crispy skin and all that would be really good.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, heck, grilled cheese, like, you know, have at it. Yeah.
I'm a sucker for mac and cheese.
Ooh, this would be, that would be really
like
good.
Maybe a chicken.
Yeah, cacio e
Mac and
pepe,
cheese,
that's
yeah.
like the adult mac and cheese,
Yeah.
right?
No, we're not talking craft
Yeah.
here. Yeah. Although my kids would be into it.
Velveeta! Gosh, this wine is great. You know, what's nice about this is having seen this wine from barrel to bottle.
It's matured for sure.
Yeah, this wine has been out for about a year now, I
Right.
think, right? Something
Yeah,
along those lines.
last May I think we bottled
And
it.
it's just really been coming more and more into its own. And that speaks again about the ageability of a wine under screw cap, that it's not just gonna be like a time capsule where you bottle it and it's gonna be stuck in this kind of juvenile phase of its life. It's really an opportunity to see wine develop evenly. And I just am really happy with how this wine has progressed. It's really
so do
shown
we
up.
have a new vintage of Chardonnay that's in barrel currently?
Yeah. So we have our 2019s are still in barrel. We tend to, I love Chardonnay, and that's like what my whole kind of career background has been in for the most part. We tend to follow this sort of program of Chardonnay that I've got where I really like to see them spend what we call over vintaging, where it's basically like the 2019 Chardonnays are going to spend about 15 to 16 months in barrel. So over vintaging means that you're not going to have those barrels available for the new wines that are coming in. So like let's say 2020, our Chardonnay is going to be picked. We had to buy brand new barrels to put that Chardonnay into because our 2019s are still in barrel. That's what over vintaging means.
Yeah.
It's a really good opportunity to see the wine develop and age in barrel. And it also means by over vintaging the wines in barrel that when we release them, that you don't have to wait another 6 months to a year for the wine to develop more of those kind of secondary and tertiary layers of flavor and aromatics, because we've kind of already done the work for you by aging them in the cellar in barrel. It makes for a more complex Chardonnay, and because we leave the wine on its fermentation lees, so lees are, if you've ever had like a Belgian beer and you see a little bit of sediment on the bottom, those are lees. Lees are basically like, as the yeast are kind of doing their happy dance and eating the sugar and whatnot, they're producing a couple things, ethanol and CO2. And when they reach this sort of like critical mass of alcohol and acidity, basically once the wine is dry, all the yeasts start to kind of die off, and they leave this like silty, kind of powdery lees on the bottom of the barrel. They work for going through, as they autolysize, basically as they kind of convert into different compounds, they make for a longer, more like progressive, slow, like oxidizing of the wine in ways that's not like if you were just to leave out like a bottle of wine on your counter and then you know how sometimes it gets like really oxidized. These lees help to make this like fine oxidation happen. And that helps to smooth out rough acids, smooth out any tannins, and that's again why aging in barrel for that amount of time is really important for the development.
But we do have some wines where that happens in the bottle. Like we have some that you can actually see it happening in the bottle.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah. That happens for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
In large part because if we can avoid it, like to leave all of our wines unfined and unfiltered. So fining means like adding a product to it that would be like grab onto heavy proteins and whatnot to let them fall out. That usually happens in tank. Generally, that kind of product looks like it's like bentonite, like you add a really fine, like powdery clay powder to it, and it grabs onto everything big and heavy, and it just falls right out. And you can also see in bottle like tartrates.
Right.
So if you aren't cold stabilizing your wines, that means like basically putting your wine into a tank and making it really cold for 3 weeks. All of those big like flaky tartrates, probably seen bottles of wine like that before. Those get bound out. Those tartrates that you see in bottle, I think like anecdotally, I think it's kind of interesting. That's essentially like cream of tartar.
Right.
So if you've ever had to add that before, it's basically just that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
I know. Fascinating.
I can listen to you talk about wine all day. I learn something new every time, for sure. So something else to know about Abbey Road Farm is that we are a collective here. So Luke not only helps with our Abbey Road Farm label, but he has his own labels, 2 of them, that produce and taste out of here. So total, we have 3 winemakers now. Is that right?
I guess now we have 4.
4 winemakers.
So it's me, James, Adrian, Brian, and Meredith. 5.
Yeah. So, and how many labels do we have now?
Now we have 5 plus 2 is 7.
7 labels.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool that you get this whole mix of different types of wines, although you guys all are pretty similar in style. But like his Statera label, for example, is a Chardonnay only
So all we
label.
make is Chardonnay.
And then he partners with Meredith on, that's the Statera label. And then you have your own label, which makes them really unique.
Yeah, very like just kind
small
of
boutique. I hate that word.
whimsy.
But like small styles of wine and small batch productions. But it's kind of cool because you can taste a lot of these wines out of our tasting room, and then if you become a wine club member, usually there's a good mix of our different labels and types of wines in the wine club shipments. So I think that's a really unique thing about us versus some other wineries where you're maybe just getting one style of wine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to echo Kristen's point, I really think that what's really unique about our wine club is that you don't know, like, it's not like every March you're like, cool, I'm getting that same 3-pack I got last March.
Right.
It's like because there's different winemakers here and they all have different schedules for when wines are getting released, you really never know what you're gonna get, and it's often, you'll get a 6-pack of wines and it'll be like 4 different wineries represented there.
Right.
And it's an awesome way to get to learn quite a lot about a lot of different kinds of wine. I think what Kristen was saying is that we make wine in similar styles, meaning that we have a similar ethos about how we do it. We tend to be very hands-off with what we're doing. We're not like a big commercial kind of winery where we're adding a bunch of unnecessary things to the wines. We're really just trying to let the vineyards and the fruit do their speaking. Everything is natively fermented. That means that just the natural yeast that is growing on and in the grapes is what's going to go into being the yeast that ferments it into wine. Instead of using like commercial yeast that comes in like a freeze-dried bag, it's just not my style.
Right.
Yeah.
Or anybody else's style here. Yeah.
Nope.
Well, let's talk about Pinot Noir. So this is our 2018 Pinot Noir, and again, it features one of our animals who lives on the property. I think this is Darcel. He's one of our 2 roosters that live on property, and they're by accident, which if you know anything about getting baby chicks, they come sexed, which means there's like a 90% chance that they're all females, which we want females because they produce eggs for our bed and breakfast and things like that on property. And in our last batch, we got 2 roosters by accident, but they ended up being okay. Usually you can only have 1 rooster, otherwise they get sort of territorial. So we have both of them, and this one is Darcel. And so I'll let you talk a little bit about this Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Should I open it?
Yeah, have at it. So this Pinot Noir is also a 2-vineyard blend. It's a blend of Carlton Hill Vineyard, which is located here in the Yamhill Carlton AVA, and also Rainsong Vineyard, which is located in the southern Willamette Valley, just west of Eugene. It's not like a particularly warmer site down there. It's just this beautiful, storied vineyard in the middle of these gorgeous woods. And James Ron, our director of winemaking, has a long history of making wine from that Rainsong site, and was really just jumped at the opportunity to purchase some Pinot Noir from there. It's basically blended as these 2 vineyards because different vineyards are going to end up tasting like themselves, and Carlton Hill tends to be a bit of like a bigger, bolder kind of wine that's really speaking to the type of soils we have here in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. The main soil that we have here is a soil type called Willikenzie series. It's the oldest soil type in the Willamette Valley. It's around 220 million years old. Basically, when all of this was in ocean floor, all of the like happy shrimps and lobsters and everything like that, as they die and their exoskeletons of these sea bugs and whatnot start to break down, it breaks down into a really fine, like silty sea bed. And as via lots of geological activity, this was all uplifted out of the ocean. Over time, that just became drier and drier and desiccated and more and more desiccated, and it has this really fine, silty, almost diatomaceous earth. Like if you need to do like a clay mask or something, come out here and we'll hook you up with some soil. It's really good. It's awesome stuff.
Mix it with like essential oils and you're good.
So this is a classic Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. You have maybe heard people say like forest floor, and this is kind of what leans into that. And by forest floor, we really mean like if you are out for a hike in some of our beautiful like Doug fir forests, and you kind of, especially right after it's rained, and you can just smell the trees aspirating, you can just like get a sense of like the like decaying like pine needles and pine cones and mushrooms growing everywhere. It's just that kind of whole experience wrapped up in one aromatic profile.
Yeah.
It is very much like that. While also combined with like fresh fruit, and we often are looking at Yamhill Carlton AVA as having really dark fruited notes. And by dark fruit, I mean like the way that like the aromatics of like blackberry juice on your hands when you're picking fresh blackberries, they just have that kind of like dark purpley kind of like scent. Like it's just spot on with that. Rainsong Vineyard adds quite a bit of like beauty to it, and it adds this sort of like velvety sort of mouthfeel to the wine. And the Carlton Hill Vineyard adds this more kind of like aggressive, bigger tannin, and so those 2 vineyards coming together make for a really nice experience in the glass.
For sure. So you can definitely smell the like dark berries on it.
As this wine ages a bit more, I get more and more like kind of like light baseball glove, which I always think is like a really nice note. It's that like kind of like worn but like seasoned leather. Yeah, it just has that really nice kind of scent to it. A touch resinous, and it's just really, I don't know, I'm really into how these 18s turned out.
Yeah. And so would you say that this one is like ready to drink right now, or would you let it mature a little bit more?
We definitely release wines that are ready to drink, and that's another part of over-vintaging the wines.
Yeah.
But that said, we are also designing the wines to be in bottle for some time. So especially in 18 was somewhat of a banner year, and we picked the fruit just right, and picking decisions make a lot of impact on how the ageability of the wine will turn out, because you have to pick for the natural acidity and if the fruit's just right. So 18 was a pretty hot year, but it was also like a pretty even growing season compared to 2017, which was just like a hot, really like aggressively hot year. And by contrast, 2019, which was like the summer that never happened in Oregon. If y'all are here, remember like summer just basically
it didn't happen at all.
It was wild, yeah. So fruit came in like really low in sugars. 2018 was just kind of that like perfect even number year. Anecdotally, I think it's interesting that Oregon's best years have always been even years.
I was going to say that like 2016 was a really good year.
And really,
too,
we looked at like with the exception of 2014, which was like overblown hot year.
Right.
08 was a banner year. 2012 was probably the best year that Winnebago Valley's ever had. We'll just not talk about 14. 2016 is like absolutely sick. If you can get your hands on 2016s out there in the valley, very, very good stuff. 2018, phenomenal. And even 2020, the wines that are coming in, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about this, the wines that are coming in are going to be extraordinary, and we cannot wait for people to get to try them when they're ready. It's going to be some time. But this wine, you can definitely age it for just about as long as you want. It's got tannin, so tannin is that like, it feels like on the roof of your mouth, that like, kind of like grittiness
dry
to it.
end to it.
Yeah, for sure. So tannin and acidity both work as natural preservatives of the wine. So if you've got really nice tannins in the wine and you've got really nice acidity, those two are just like a match made in heaven. You can lay the bottle down in your cellar for some time. I always say cellar because what else you can call it? But it's like that shelf under your kitchen.
Cellars, right?
Don't you just have like that spiral staircase down into that like beautiful
with the glass floor?
Yeah,
so
don't you? Yeah, duh. Yeah, I totally have one in my 2-bedroom apartment. But yeah, that tannin will over time will bind to oxygen that is coming through the permeable seal here, and it works to slow down the oxidation of the wine. So as that happens, the wine will get a little bit more garnet colored around the edges. So it'll turn a little bit more from this like kind of like dark black cherry color right now. You'll start seeing some like orange on the rim of all of this, and that like garnet coloring or ruby coloring there will show that the wine is like progressing and is aging kind of as designed. This is a wine that I think both of these, frankly, because this has a ton of acid and it's just like singing right now. The Pinot is just got like beautiful acidity and really nice tannin to it. Both of these you could comfortably lay down for at least 5 years if you wanted to. I think that you could probably see 10 years out of them and be really happy with the results.
Great.
Yeah, I think so too. Cheers, Queen.
Cheers.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this season, because I know that the happenings of this year is a topic of conversation for a lot of people. Like, how is it going to affect the grapes, especially this latest wildfires and smoke that we had lingering in our area for over a week. So have you guys seen, is it too early to tell what kind of effect that will have? What do you guys anticipate for that?
So one, no, it's not too early to tell. We are making decisions for these wines of 2020 that are basically trying to mitigate whatever smoke effect would have taken place.
Okay.
Those decisions mean making less wine. So basically like treating the wine a little differently so that you're not gonna have this like, open a bottle and it smells like campfire.
Right.
We are making less of certain kinds of wines and more of other kinds of wines. So I think that most of the smoke gets bound up in the skins, and so you'll see a lot of rosé coming out this year.
Yeah.
Probably see a lot of white wines getting made, a lot of white wines getting made from traditionally red grapes.
Makes sense.
You can make a white wine out of any grape. So
you just remove the skins after you press it, right?
Yeah, you basically don't let the juice hang out with the skins at all, and then you can make a cleaner white wine that way. We are still sticking to our guns of not going like in the aggressive wine additive route. So we're not gonna, a lot of wineries are adding like activated charcoal to their wines to like bind to the smoke, but I've done quite a bit of research on smoke effect, and just because you're adding activated charcoal doesn't take away that smoke effect entirely, and so you could see people's wines like initially have a little bit of that smoke smell removed from it,
right,
but it will just come back. So essentially there are these compounds, glycols are what these smoke compounds are called here in the Pacific Northwest. Our glycols are called creosoles because we basically have like most of our wines our trees around here are conifers, and they have a different kind of smoke compound that will end up in the wine. It tends to be very aggressive. Most of the smoke research that we have at this point is coming out of Australia, and most of their trees are like eucalyptus and whatnot. So they don't have the pine trees that we have.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen is like, we kind of don't entirely know right now, but I do know that we are making, we're making a lot of decisions to make sure that the wines that we have from 2020 here at the farm are still gonna be delicious and that everybody's gonna like them.
Yeah, and this isn't the first year that we've dealt with fires and
No.
smoke. So
2017 was my first year dealing with it, and I worked for another winery then. That was my first year dealing with it, and I learned quite a lot from that experience. And I've done a lot more research since then, and have really just tried to kind of develop a kind of like smoke acumen for dealing with this sort of problem.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And I wanted to thank you guys for your dedication to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and for joining us for this tasting event. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the wines, and with the food that was delivered to you, we'll have a nice evening with some delicious things to enjoy.
Cheers.
So, cheers. Thank you.